One thing we're not going to be doing today in detail is the area of mosaics, because having done it in great detail, we don't need to repeat all that. So the archaeology of the art of the Romans, not in Greece and not in Turkey, but the archaeology of the art of the Romans in our own wonderful land. And I've managed to get as many images as I could to be as concise as I'm able to, but the topic matter was so wide-ranging that there's so much that I had to miss out. But we've started off on this design, which is a scallop shell on a Roman mosaic that is not to be found in this country, because there's themes within this lecture today. The lion, the lioness, the scallop shell, and one or two other areas that will become very apparent. So when we present this on Monday and Tuesday, the clear flaws of the lecture was that I didn't have enough detail, and now we certainly do. So on to the next slide, and the next slide will paint out the areas where we're going to visit on this lecture, and also it links us in with the trip to Colchester in October, and it links us in to the trip to Hadrian's Wall for those who are damnable lucky to be going, because English Heritage have been exceedingly generous to us on that trip, and with the sites that we're going to be visiting. So, scallop shell. Moving on to the next slide. Now, one thing that we can say is that art in the Roman period isn't as true life in all the areas as we saw was present in most of the areas with ancient Greece last week. You know, lots of images were really good, but sort of not as good as the ancient Greek stuff, not as fine and refined. But this is really interesting in itself. This is not an example from here, but what we do know from fragmentary evidence is that their wooden coffins were painted in this country for those who were lucky to be buried in wooden coffins. And there was a portrait of the individual who was to be found in that coffin. And as we're coughing, who is this?
Hey.
Dennis, take your seat over there, and somehow you're going to have to negotiate over the lead.
Okay, I'll be careful.
Can you help him out with that, Gillian, for the lead? Right. Don't fall and break your neck, Dennis. I've got your medicine today as well. Right. So,
Morning, Dennis.
Good morning, everyone.
with these wonderful portraits, we do have fragmentary evidence, and what we do find in Britain as well is that we do find scant evidence of beautifully painted frescoes as well. We're not really going to visit these areas, but this is just to give you a little bit of an idea. I wanted to really focus on Roman Britain, and I really seem to have found most of the material that we need. And we're also going to be looking at silverwork, i.e. the Hoxne hoard, with a beautiful lioness. And we glance a little bit at the coinage that was available in Roman Britain. And there's the hammer. The hammer leads into discovery of the coins, leads into the discovery of the wonderful hoard at Hoxne, which included not just 1,000 coins, but over 10,000 coins in the assemblage of material at Hoxne. That's a lecture about hoards, and that's a lecture about something completely different. But the level of material found at Hoxne is purely great to give us an understandability of the greatness of the Roman world in Britain. And in metalwork, in frescoes, in mosaics, in temples, in statuary, whether that's in stone or whether that's in metal, brooches and so on and so on. Brooches are completely absent today. Try and fit everything in. Now, that there. Do you know what? I sometimes doubt my memory with things, and I was thinking, can I remember this? Okay, can I remember this? And this itself is the Cramond lioness. And the Cramond lioness is a beautiful lion that was found not so many years ago in muds just by the Roman fort at Cramond. Now, I've got in a huge was trying to look at this lecture and trying to keep away from mentioning burials all the time. You know, anything. Most of the writing about carvings and statuary seem to be always associated with burial in Roman Britain. And when I'm reading that, I'm thinking, I can't really go along with all this. So whenever they say that this wonderful eagle is associated with a burial, I go a little bit in a different direction. When they found this by the fort of Cramond in Scotland, near Edinburgh, in the heart of Roman Scotland, they found this dumped in the river. It was complete, this wonderful lioness. Tell it's a lioness because there's no mane on it. And she's chomping at a warrior here. And they immediately said this is associated with a monument, a mausoleum. But I started to think there's no evidence that it was actually associated with it. It could be a monumental piece of work somewhere within the Roman fort or somewhere around the Roman civilian vicus or something. Because the Romans did love their statuary. They weren't as good as the Greeks, but they did love their statuary. Naturally, the Romans are locusts. They stole everything from all these wonderful civilizations around the world, including the wonderful Etruscans that we'll look at in a few weeks' time.
How big is that, Carl? Any ideas?
It's from about there to there.
Christ, it's just a monster.
It's not that size.
No, no.
It's not that size like the Lion of Cowbridge. Have you seen the Cramond? No.
Where is the Cramond?
Edinburgh Museum. The Lion of Cowbridge is that size. The Cramond is from there to there. An eagle that we're gonna look at now, a stone eagle, in a short while, is 6.4 meters in height, right, in solid limestone. And when we did the class on Monday, I got this big boulder on the side of the room which is carved, and I said, well, this is the illustration is made of limestone, and you'll see it when we come to it. And we got this stone. We thought, oh my God, this is heavy. And I said, well, the eagle itself is 5 times the size and 5 times the weight of this boulder. And apparently, it was on the top of a funeral monument, and I started to say no. Supporting that on the roof, yeah, right. This. Every time. Big ears, 1966. No, that wasn't found in the Thames. That was found near Colchester. In another river, which we'll cut, the River Addle, I think it is. But anyway, we'll come on to that in a short while. This itself is a bronze from Colchester. And this is a beautiful bronze from Colchester. This is believed to be the actual representation of Emperor Claudius himself. So I'm saying Nero, but Emperor Claudius, because just down the road from where this was found, there was a temple that was dedicated to Claudius himself. Claudius became a god, but anything associated with Claudius, anything associated with anybody, anything Roman, in the 60-61 Boudica uprisings, or Boadicea, or Boothig, or whatever you want to call her, or them, because there was probably more than one person called Boudica. Anything to do with the Romans was absolutely obliterated. And the fate of women who were captured, and the fate of men that were captured, you don't need me to be graphic to understand what they did with their anatomy. Anything to do with statuary, I use the word in its right context, was completely raped of any order at all. They were completely destroyed. The statue itself was broken off. You can all remember that horrific image of Saddam Hussein's statue coming down in Baghdad. And when I say horrific image, it topples down, and the body's being broken up as an act of utter defiance to the previous regime. And the head itself would have then been paraded. This is a bronze, it's hollow. You can imagine them parading the head of Claudius. And that itself is the greatest blasphemy that you can ever think of. this guy's a god, and his head is being paraded on a staff. The rest of his body would have been broken up and eventually tossed into the river as a final act of defiance. But again, more to come. This itself is a pepper pot. It's this big. No, it's tiny. It's about that big. It's a really tiny pepper pot. It's a silver pepper pot with gold gilt on it. Obviously, gold's gold. But it gleams. It stands out. It's an empress. And this itself was buried in a chest at Hoxley with those thousands of coins and spoons and various other bits and pieces. It was probably one of a number of chests that were buried there, but we've only found one. But that chest itself gives you the glories of Roman civilization in silverwork, in metal work. Now, I wanted to put a few things from outside in to understand Roman Britain. You can't get everything because not everything has survived. One thing that we do know is that in the Roman world, in particularly, you see their way of life represented in wonderful arches. Okay, the Arch de Triomphe in Paris, constructed under the orders of Napoleon in 1803, is the embodiment of the Roman ideal years later. So the Arch of Trajan, the Arch of Constantine, actual contemporary Roman arches, portray the Roman world. Unfortunately, none have survived to any extent in Britain. There was one at Richborough, there was possibly one in Londinium. I think we found footings for that, and then possibly one at Eberarkham. They haven't really survived like the ones on the continent, but they would have had a clash of architectural styles, carving styles. You've got a wonderful frieze along the bottom here, which would be very similar to that wonderful column in Rome, Trajan's column. They love their columns. They're wonderful, sort of the Roman world in a column. Okay, the wonderful conquests in a column that spirals up and up and up and up and up. I've never seen it. But that's where frieze there. And then you've got these little sort of intaglios in stone, sort of a little plaque in stone. And these intaglios are really sort of that size. Each of these is around that size, really big things. That's showing Hadrian. This is the Arch of Constantine. That showed Hadrian hunting a lion or a lioness, because we lost its head and its mane. So Hadrian's hunting a lioness, because they were out and about there. So what they would do, they'd bring the lions over from Africa, put them in a field outside Rome, and they'd hunt them. Job done. Bob's your uncle. Not too good for the lion. And then over here, what you see here is, for example, Hadrian, or any emperor, sacrificing to the gods. Remember, this is time before Christianity, but these things have survived on the continent. Over here, we just locked the things down to be used as building material. Job done, Bob's your uncle. So we don't have that sort of connection. We have not really had this connection with the past in this country as they do on the continent. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we've been continually altered with our mindsets. So say, for example, Roman civilization collapses. By the 500s, Rome is almost as if it didn't happen, because now you've got the Anglo-Saxons coming in, who they're changing sort of what's going on. They're moving people away from the towns and cities and saying, right, we're the Anglo-Saxons, we're going to rule over you. I know you're Romans, and I know you're Britons, and I know you're this, and you know you're that. You're coming out here, you're going to help us build this village. So Roman civilization was abandoned. It wasn't kept up. And what that means is that any temples and stuff fell into disintegration, and any stuff left was used in later periods, when people started moving into the towns and cities again, like Londinium and Eberarkham and Verulamium and so on and so on. So on the continent, however, in places like Nîmes and Trier and Rome itself, they could use these buildings still, because they didn't move away from these towns and cities, and they may, like Ravenna, for example, the Pantheon in Rome itself, that's used as a church. So it's one of the best bottles of wine, one of the best temples. still remaining completely intact in the Roman world, and we've no idea how that dome went up on the top. It's still there, beautiful. And I've never asked, but how many people have been to Rome and actually seen any of the things I've described? The Trajan's Column. Trajan's Column?
Don't think so.
Pantheon?
Yeah.
You saw the Colosseum. How dare you if you did?
Yeah.
Exactly. But we don't have Trajan. We don't have Trajan's Column. We don't have the Colosseum here. Our equivalent of the Colosseum are the humps and bumps in Dorchester, and what's left in Carmarthen, and what you see in Killeen, for example. We don't have anything like the Colosseum, but we do believe that one or two existed in Chester, and one or two maybe in Londinium, and as for York, no idea. And I know Alan wants me to announce a York trip, but that's going to be a couple of years off yet. Now, why have we got it? And to be honest with you, right, unfortunately, Goff is going to ask for his money back today, even though he's not paid it. I avoided any images of erotica today, under the instructions of Ellen being really upset with an image of erotica in every single lecture. But they will return next week. Sorry, Ellen. So, why are we showing this? Why are we showing this image? Scratch and sniff? No, we're not going to scratch and sniff. We're showing this image because probably a right or a wrong portrayal of a native Briton with a Roman scribe, Roman soldiers. The illustration here isn't brilliant, but the metaphor is there. And the metaphor is we want your taxes, or we want your goods, and if we are going to give you something in return, we're going to give you a coin or something that you can use like a brooch. So in comes what the Romans needed, out goes what the Romans want them to think and do. Roman civilization. Roman civilization is the art that they now wear on their fingers with a taglio, a brooch, and suddenly a Roman. Okay, you take on anything to do with Roman, and you're Roman. That's it. You've taken the coin. You've taken the king's shilling again, and then therefore you're listed into Roman civilization. This is how it worked. Art was the Roman vehicle to make you Roman. Why have I used this completely rubbish representation of Hadrian's Wall? And why is it rubbish? Well, they've got the Romans on one side waiting for the people from the north to jump over the wall, and then completely wrong. And the reason why I've used this really there's no crenellations along the top, there's no walkway, it's completely wrong. The reason why I put this in there, this is not Roman civilization, this is not Roman Britain. Oh, they do have a picture shield there, they got that one right. And the soldiers are completely wrong because they're nice and shiny and all the rest of it, forget it. But everything's wrong about this, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because Roman civilization did have a sense of art, did have a sense of civilization, and these people jumping over were brought in the main into the Roman civilized way of life. You can't have a province. This is a very, very good point. You can't have a province for 400 years if it's continual warfare. It's not going to happen. Any country that's at continual war with itself will not last 5 minutes. So there were huge areas of complete and utter peace in Roman Britain. It was a complete Garden of Eden for some people who wanted to get away from Rome. God, you lived in Rome at that time, 200 years AD, 1 million people, tenement blocks, 10 stories high, sewage running through the streets. I would prefer to be in Britain, to be honest with you. Love it. I love it. Completely love it. It's absolutely beautiful. And this is 64 centimetres in height. Okay? It's quite a chunky piece. And it's about that wide as well, with the wingspan. Absolutely beautiful. It's an eagle gnawing away at a snake. And this, other than a little chunk there, was found completely intact. The story associated with this, I don't buy, but we'll read a little bit about it to give you sort of an unbiased standpoint. Again, this was found really recently. Some of the best Roman art has been found really recently, and not by somebody using a metal detector either. I wanted to chuck this in there like we did last week. I'll just read from there, so let's just get the light in there. Roman art refers to the visual arts made, it says in ancient Rome, we're doing Roman Britain, Roman Empire. Roman art includes architecture, like we did last week with Greece, painting, sculpture, mosaic work, completely with Rome. We always think mosaics with the Romans. Luxury objects in metalwork, we've seen a bit of that. Gem engraving, we'll look at one intaglio today, not 1,000. Ivory carvings, none present today. Tiny bit of glass that we're going to do today. Are sometimes considered in modern terms to be minor forms of Roman art, but to us today they are Roman art. Sculptures were perhaps considered as the highest form of art by the Romans. Their sculptures, lots of their sculptures were good, but lots of their other work was not as good as the Greeks. And what we then see is that in the early stages of Roman Britain, I believe this is what I feel. The height of Roman Britain in Britain was at the beginning, and by the end it starts to get a bit naff. Would you agree with that, Alan?
No, because I'm a bit old.
Oh, a balanced view. Yeah, okay. And you got Roman pottery itself, the terra sigillata, which is the Samian, and the Samian itself is the beautiful, polished Roman pottery with scenes that are to be found practically on every single Roman site throughout Britain. And Roman coins themselves, in the wording here, it said Roman coins were an important means of propaganda and have survived in enormous numbers across the Roman Empire. There she is. Oh, maybe you can't read that. What's that there on the intaglio on the other side? Can I have that? Thank you. An intaglio was smaller than that. Maybe what we could do is a little bit bigger than that 5p piece. There you go. That's basically the size. We had a 1p piece there, which
It does actually.
Looks like a thing.
Bugs Bunny.
well, we have
Looks like a dinosaur.
Michelle's got 10 of these. They're cockerels. That's a cockerel being driven by a cockroach.
A cockroach.
A cockerel being driven by a cockroach. And basically it's on the chariot with two little strange wheels and stuff. And this is incised into a very precious stone, jasper, taglio stone, and this would have been in a ring. And as you know, Alan, you're going through the baths, man or a woman, and you've got an intaglio in your ring, and you knock it up against the wall, and oh my God, the intaglio's gone down into the sewage system. In Caerleon, as they were excavating the sewage system, they found over 100 of these intaglios in Caerleon in the sewage system. Those that survived, because they should have been washed out into the river, but in little crevices, there must have been tens of thousands of them going down the drain. Like we see at the Great Drain in wonderful Bath as well. These intaglios themselves are not the height of Roman art. It looks very good, okay? For Alan, it looks wonderful. He loves it. But these were lost, and then you would have had another intaglio placed within a setting. So these again are small. That's I like that bit, but I think that bit spoils it. But it's wonderful in itself. But we find these. Sorry for the pun. We find these gems quite often associated with bathhouses. Can be lost really easily. Do you know? Once I had a Roman ring, and I knocked it against something, and the whole thing shattered. Strangely enough, it shattered in so small pieces. Anyway, we're not going to be doing this one at all, but This is the Middle Hall Hoard. And the Middle Hall Hoard,
Melbourne Hall.
that's the one. Hang on, it is Milton Hall. Hey, I could just blame it on my pronunciation, couldn't I? Block nose and stuff. Milton Hall Hoard. And this itself is at the height of Roman silverwork. But there is even a higher height when we go to the Hoxne. And you can see these wonderful huge platters, these wonderful bowls, and they loved their spoons. Loved them. I know this isn't clear, I'm sorry, but we do have some spoons coming up. A very similar spoon to some one somebody showed me on the weekend. Was it Steve who had a spoon, or was it somebody else?
Steve,
Who was that? Oh no! It was Dirty Mike. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So similar to these little things here. I hope you haven't told anyone that he showed you a naked photograph of himself.
No, that was Mike.
That was Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one.
It
Oh
wa-
yes, it was him with the spoon.
Yeah, that's
it
right.
was, yeah.
And he let you smooth this spoon.
Yes.
I reckon that's
Lucky you.
I think
It
it.
was 4 days.
So what date was that?
Thursday, Friday, or
What date was that, Carl?
Oh, right, the Milton Hall, right.
Yeah.
Right. What we do see is this is the exception to the rule with my sort of Roman art, and you'll see what I mean when we come up. And maybe it's not fair in the eyes of Alan, and maybe he's right, but this is most of this stuff is from the later period of Roman Britain. The silver work was extremely good. I'm talking about the other sort of carvings and stuff. But the silver work was extremely grand. And this is basically towards the late 300s. And what's happening towards the late 300s, we're getting really confused now. There's a school of thought of archaeologists who still are obsessed that the Roman military left Britain in the early 400s. And there's the likes of myself who say that the Roman military never left Britain because there wasn't much of a Roman military left. Because those that were the Roman military in Britain stayed. As we would see at Birdoswald on Hadrian's Wall next week. There's a Roman garrison there in the 430s. So in parts of Britain, it's turned into a Holocaust. And the reason why it's turned into a Holocaust is that there are diseases coming over. There's complete breakdown of order. But in places like Carlisle, along bits of Hadrian's Wall, and the likes of Killeen, things are still functioning 430, 440. But in some areas they're burying these complete sets of silverware. And they're I think the word in the proper context would be gently burying these items into the ground. They're not chucking them into a bag and saying, get it into the ground. We've got a horde of people coming towards us. They're put in boxes. They're put in casks. A nicely dug hole. This is preparation. They're burying these things. They're not tossing them in the ground because there's somebody coming. So there might be another reason why they're burying them. We're always told that they're burying them because they're going to come back for them. These people know they're not going to come back for them. Okay? They know that what they're burying in the ground, they're not going to come back for. Or it's to do with something else. We can't have any of these answers. We're only really, because of the Vindel and the tablets, because what we're finding, because the HS2 in London, we've got some tablets surviving with land grants and stuff, a bit more information. We're only really starting to understand Roman Britain properly now. We thought we did, but we're starting to understand it. So why these things were being buried, not really sure. But they're perfect in the late 300s. Perfection. That itself takes us to the name of this individual is Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus, otherwise known as the Unconquered Sun. This stone relief is to be found a lot at the Roman fortification of Corbridge, dedicated to the temple of Jupiter Dolorcinus. And we do get these lots. to be honest with you, I thought, right, do I do stone reliefs that have been found along Hadrian's Wall today? Yes or no? And because there's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, I just thought, let's just sort of do one or two to try and get everything in there. This is from about the 200s. It's not the height of Roman carving, and this is what I mean, the late sort of 200s this is from. But again, dedicated to a god, Roman civilization, and the point is Roman civilization, is it not, Alan? However good quality it is. And look at that there. That's the Greek god Solinus. And there's a hell of a lot of copper content in that. But this itself, that's only so high. It's not that big. This was found at Richborough. It may be associated with a temple. This is the Roman god Solinus, who was an ugly brute with a beard. He's got some kind of deformity with his eye. And this is the great Greek god of wine. And you are to be protected by this individual. And I do believe that somebody on the trip to Hadrian's Wall will be presented with a bottle of wine so you can all drink it on the minibus as you go on. Glasses will be provided. So by the time you get there, you'll be so drunk that my presentation at Bernderswald, I could just say what I like.
Only one bottle.
Well, no, unfortunately, we don't have anything like this really surviving in Roman Britain. It's really fragmentary. But again, with the reason why our frescoes haven't really survived in this country is because there's a lot of moisture in the air. Okay, frescoes are going to react to water and they're going to decay quite rapidly. So the examples that we find in Egypt, Greece, and Italy are far better quality than anything that's been recovered in this country. But we got a good idea that anything that we painted was as good as the stuff on the continent, as marvelingly as great as the stuff on the continent. It's just the fact that our weather conditions weren't as good for preservation. Now that's chucked in that as a red herring deliberately. That's the sarcophagi of an Etruscan. And the idea of these stone sarcophagi with a beautiful effigy on the top is something that the Romans tried to copy. Lots of the Roman highly carved sarcophagi in Britain have either been broken up, destroyed, or used for something else. But we do have a little bit in the sense of marvels from Roman Britain in connection with their carving. Coins themselves, there's a few coins in here today. This is a coin, this is a very interesting coin. This is a Roman coin that was found in context in Britain, and it dates to 211 years BC. The Romans didn't get you for nearly another 300 years, well, 280 odd years. They didn't come here for another 280 odd years. And what we do see is that as people are trading with the continent and Britain, there's a coin exchange. And that coin exchange, again, is telling you about the Roman world. This is a Roman Republican coin, but again, it's telling you about the Roman world. You've got horses and charioteers on the reverse of this coin. Well, that would be very interesting to the people in our country because we're still using these wonderful chariots when on the continent they're really not used them as much as they did. So we'd associate with these, and we eventually copied our coins like the Roman coins around 50 to 60 BC when we're starting to produce our own coins. But it took a bit of a while actually. Look at those. Look at the perfection of that coin. This is I think this is Maximinius, so this is actually dates to the early 300s AD. This is a wonderful gold coin. This is Bia Solidus, this is Bia Denari. Obviously, this representation of a charioteer and Roma goes all the way back to the early days of the foundation of the Roman state in the year 753 BC, and the year of our foundation of our city, Aber bei Condita. So This itself dates all the way back. The Romans, this is their Britannia. Except, yes, I'm to be reminded, the representation of Britannia is also to be found on British coins. This is why we use Britannia today, because it's not about our queen, it's from a Roman coin. We issued coins with Britannia on. And the Romans would continually represent their founding. They were quite proud of being Roman. And to sack Rome, to rape and pillage through Rome, was the greatest blasphemy that could ever be. And in the year 410, a Roman looted Rome. And Rome would be continually looted until its final looted in 476 AD. But they were extremely proud of Rome up until that point. And you were meant to be proud of Rome. You were meant to be proud of Rome, even though none of you were born in Italy. Don't start, Andrea. Have you got Italian blood, or is it? Somebody was telling me that they had Maltese blood. It wasn't you. Anyway, other than nobody in the room, you were all meant to embody this Italian ideal, this Roman ideal. You are all Roman now. You've taken the Roman coin, and you are now bought into that ideal. That itself, I do have one of these coins, but unfortunately it's in bronze. This is a coin of Carausius. There you go, Carausius. There it is, perfectly in there. Carausius was a usurper Roman general who created the first British Empire. This was in the year 286-287 to before his assassination in 293 by Electus. He created his own British Empire, and that included bits of France, and obviously mainland Britain until the Romans decided to get it back again. But there is Carausius, again represented on his coin with laurels of imperial office. Oh, a later coin. That is a coin of Honorius. And Honorius presided over the slow demise of the Roman world. He was a very interesting Roman emperor. And you've got Roma, spelled with an O in reverse there. So whoever put the die together for this sort of screwed up a little. But you get an idea there. Really interesting, really fine coins. So if you had one of these in your pockets, you're emulating the Roman ideal. It's the whole point. This is the whole reason why we have these coins with the Queen's head on it, because we had to feel that we're part of this British world by holding this coin. We're part of Britishness. Whether you feel it or you're not, that's meant to be the effect. This is meant to be the effect with Rome. This coin itself is about the size of a 10-pence piece. I just chucked that in there. Very interesting coin, this. A Roman scallop shell from 230. If anyone looks at that, what does that look like to you guys? Go on, say it, Chris. Prince of Wales feathers, yes. Represented on a Roman coin. Interesting, that. Here we go. Here is the beast. Here is the eagle. You get an idea of the size of this by that woman's head. And you could see, get an idea of scale, she's set back a little. She's only set back a little bit. Her head's obviously the same size as mine. And you see the eagle's head. And you see the body. And you can. And it's a big beast, isn't it? I wouldn't be able to lift it by myself. She wouldn't have been able to lift it by herself. This is a really chunky piece. This is a wonderful work of art. You've got the snake in there as well.
Do you know what that represents?
It's meant to represent victory. It's meant to represent the Roman ideal, like the scallop shells represent the Roman ideal. It's meant to have a military connotation. If you look at the Germans with the representation of the eagle,
yeah, and the Yanks. I'm sure that's still being used today.
Yeah, it is still being used.
Coats of arms or some such.
So, I'm going to mention this comparison with ancient Greece. The high number of Roman copies of Greek art also speaks of the esteemed Roman artist's hand for Greek art, and perhaps of its rarer, and the point I made, Alan, higher quality. And I know you don't like me saying that. Many of the art forms and methods used by the Romans, such as high and low relief, freestanding sculpture, bronze casting, vase art, mosaic, cameo, coin art, fine jewelry and metalwork, funerary sculpture, perspective drawing, caricatures, genre and portrait painting, landscape painting, architectural sculpture, and other paintings, all were developed or refined by ancient Greek artists within the Roman world. One exception that the Romans, we do believe, invented was the bust, where you've got just basically torso, and the Romans invented that, we're told. What invention? What did the Romans ever do for us? The bust. So that's an art form which you do see a lot of, and that's an art form still used today, no doubt. The traditional head and shoulders bust may, some say, not be a Roman invention. We want it to be a Roman invention, could be Etruscan, but the Romans claim that it was. Virtually every artistic technique and method used by Renaissance artists 1,000 plus years later had been demonstrated by ancient Greek artists, copied by the Romans. The Greeks were mathematically perfect, and the Romans tried to copy this. Where Greek artists were highly revered in their society, most Roman artists were anonymous and considered tradesmen. They weren't respected, Roman artists, so that's probably why they didn't produce as good as the Greeks. But again, that might not be as fair as I'm placing it. There is no recording, as in ancient Greece, of the great masters of Roman art. Strange, the Romans wrote everything down short, didn't they? There's not a single piece of Roman art sculpture that has actually been signed when Greek art was. Where Greeks worshipped the aesthetic qualities of great art and wrote extensively on artistic theory, Roman art was more decorative and indicative of status and wealth, and apparently not the subject of scholars or philosophers. So again, we don't really read much about it, but it's massive. It's Roman. But basically, because it is Roman civilization, you're taking on board Roman civilization, Pax Romana. It's said that the Roman scholars didn't need to write about something that was every day. The Roman scholars didn't write about disease much because it was every day. But they like writing about the erotic side of the Roman world, which would excite Goth. Sorry, Goth, for picking on you today. I'm not allowed to pick on Dennis today. Am I, Dennis? There you go, more sides of this eagle. We'll have a little bit of a read of this, and then a couple more images, and then we shall take a break, because I'm surely needing one. Right, okay. Roman eagle rises again in London after 2,000 years. This was in 2013. I can remember having this article and reading it out to... we only had a couple of classes back then, but I can remember doing that one. Archaeologists in London have discovered I would say, one of the finest Roman British sculptures ever unearthed in the capital. And one of the finest in Britain as well. The spectacular, it says 65, what's a centimetre? 65 centimetre tall sculpture of a Roman eagle with a snake in its beak was found at the bottom of an ancient Roman ditch just south of Aldgate Station in the eastern part of the city, and went on display in the Museum of London. Now, I'm not happy with this. Originally, the eagle had almost certainly adorned either the interior or the roof of a grandiose tomb belonging to a prosperous and very important early Londoner who died in the late noughties, early 100 years AD. And if that's complete speculation, I don't know what is, because it's found in a ditch away from where the tombs were, and it's found intact in the ditch. We would like to understand that we think we know that this was associated with a burial, but it could be associated with any other structure. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Could be on a bridge.
Love it.
Over the ditch.
Love it. Love it. This is the problem in it. The problem is in archaeology. There's far too much speculation, and when you say that this was used as a burial monument, like the Lion of Cowbridge, nobody thinks outside the box. This article's obsessed with this being part of a burial. The eagle and snake imagery is likely to have reflected, here we go, the man's powerful position in life. It's in a ditch. The eagle, a Roman symbol of power, as I've said, is seen in the sculpture fighting a snake. Oh, good. Sometimes perceived in the Roman world as representing danger and the powers of the underworld. The eagle's presence on or in the tomb may have therefore also been seen as protecting the sculpture and the prominent Roman interred within it. Whether it's to do with the tomb or not, or whatever, within a short period of time, within 80 years, it ended in a ditch. It's in a ditch, more or less intact. And I think in this description here, it might be in this one, there it says it fell off the roof and didn't break as it rolled into the ditch intact. But it is the demise of that grandiose mausoleum-style tomb and the deposition of the eagle in the roadside ditch that may prove to be the greatest historical significance. That's what I feel. That it's there. It's in the ditch for a reason. The mausoleum would have been demolished if it was part of a mausoleum. Any burial monuments would have been demolished. Any buildings in that area would have been demolished. Moreover, and because of its shape and its scale, couldn't be used in the construction of a new city wall around Roman London because it was awkward and they just decided to put it in a ditch. Am I buying that? It's very strange, that. Very strange indeed.
There's a bit of a handful, that's 2 foot 60 centimetres. So maybe just somebody slung it when the roses come along, you never know. It's not feasible.
Are those lions outside
Could you-
the bungalow in Boverton on the wall?
Exactly.
They're
That's
cute.
part of our house. The thing is, slinging this thing, we had, as I say, we got this piece of blue limestone in the house. It's a pebble this big. It's not big. It's not huge. And the eagle itself, in weight and proportion, is about 4 to 5 times the weight of this thing. And one of my Valley's members, I said, right, put this in your lap. He said, oh God, I can't hold this. And I said, well, try holding this times 4. And then you'll get an idea of what the scale of this thing is. It's not light.
It's funny enough, it was saying on that programme about London,
Yeah.
that the Roman town of London was where the city of London is now.
Correct.
And then when the Anglo-Saxons came, it was in Aldwych
Yes.
and Aldgate. So
Yes.
could somebody
Outside, yes.
Yeah, pinched it, and transported it.
What I feel in archaeology is that sometimes we move away from what the object is about by saying, "Oh, it's part of this. Is this and this." You know, it belonged to Dave, and and Dave was so and so, and I'm thinking, hang on, it's an eagle. It's got this significance. Let's try and put it in context, for Pete's sake. Anyway, there's my little rant. We like a little bit of a rant. And this itself ended up in a ditch. It says flung into a ditch. Flung into a ditch, right? Yeah. We'll do a practice session. The limestone sculpture itself was originally made either in the Cotswolds or in London by a member of a group of sculptors associated with the Gloucestershire area. It is a fine piece of sculpture, I may add, really fine, from the 100s. In Britain, the only other similar known image of an eagle with a snake is a sculpture from a Roman villa in Somerset. However, elsewhere in the Roman Empire, the motive is relatively common and was inherited from an ancient Greek prototype.
How do they do it? Was made in the southwest.
He told me.
How do
Ba-
they
ba-
make
base-
stone
base-
going
there-
in from Gloucestershire?
There is two points. The stone came from Gloucestershire, right? Usually, what you would do, you would carve, you would roughly carve in the area the stone originates from, because stone's heavy. But it's the problem is with this. It's going in archaeology. What we do, we slot things into little boxes like this, right? And then suddenly you get this. And you're thinking, oh, we haven't come across this one before. Is it closer to the pink or the red? Or maybe the orange? I'll stick it in that one. That's what they're doing.
I wouldn't pick limestone to carve with those.
Yeah.
It's not-
It survived if it's a Cotswold stone.
It survived because it was buried. That's the point. If it was out in the open, it would have eroded. And yeah, that's
Well,
that.
I think it was somebody called Aquilius who had it on his gatepost.
No, Phileas.
An Anglo-
Aquilius.
No, mine was Phileas.
Well, that's your son-in-law.
You've been absolutely-
No, that's Philae.
Oh,
No, Phileas is a name. Philae is son of.
Aquinas of Roman.
Come on, Carl, I can have a fact.
Well, we'll have that then.
A military leader had it on his door.
Military leader on his door. On one more, right? We obviously. Finally, the sculpture. One thing we'll end on with that: the sculpture of exceptional quality, the finest sculpture by a Roman British artist ever found in London, close on, and ever in the history of the world. And among the very best statues surviving from Roman Britain, its condition is extraordinary. And after the break, we'll do that. That's Roman glass work. And I tell you what, does that look like a photograph?
It's lovely.
That is beautiful. It's not found in Britain, but this is found on a continent. It's glasswork, but again, this is from the Roman period, and that there does look to me like a photograph. But that's in glass. The Romans were extremely brilliant in their glass. I've got to be honest with you, and their silver work. But again, back to what I said at the beginning, their carvings in Roman Britain seem to get poorer and poorer. But that's my expression of what we're doing. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. I need to know, back to what I said, anyone wanting to do the day school, the excavations, the field work. I need to know about that. Anything for Colchester. Let's have a break. Right, lead out, please. About time we did something, Gillian. Come on, hurry up, Gillian. Guys found all the. Right, right, who's got a file in the room and wants a sticker?
Me.
Have you got a file?
Yeah.
Right, Andrea, keep that for Jane a minute. Anyone need the sticker? Need their file?
You just want it stuck on the front.
Oh, yes,
Bring it
please.
next week.
Anyway,
Yeah, by there.
Oh no.
No, you'll eventually get one. My clerical officer's pregnant again.
Oh, dear.
She's on her fourth. Yeah, she's been with me for 4 years, right? She only had one child to begin with.
It's been associated with you.
I think it is.
You could be a fertility god, Carl.
I'm a fertility god. Yeah. Where you going, Dennis?
I'm just sorting out my stuff.
All right, Dennis. That's good. Stuff is good. Sorting out stuff. There's nothing wrong with fertility.
No.
Embodied in their art, entrenched in their art. Christianity became their art. But this is when Christianity became the religion, the official religion of the Roman Empire, the and only religion of the Roman Empire by the year 395. Up until that point, it been heading up that way, as other lesser religions were passing away. I always start off by saying Christianity started off as a cult, and that's what it was. this is actually from Lulligston, the Roman villa at Lulligston. It's not as perfect as a mosaic that you'd see in Pompeii, or anywhere else for that matter, but these fragmentary bits were put together to create that image, which should be very familiar to some of you. Do you know what? I decided for a little time a few years ago. I went to I went to the church now, and I wanted to wear a little fish, and the little fish fell off onto the floor. A bicycle went over, punched its tyres, and I did a runner going down the road. That's an anecdotal story which I'll just move on from. That there, I would say, is coming into the height of Roman art in the early stages. This dates from AD 60. Now, if we didn't have a carving associated with this below, a Latin carving below, we would not know the name of this individual, who was Longinus Stiepes. But we would know from the armour itself that this individual was Thracian, so that's a clue. We would know he was a cavalryman from the shield, and obviously from some of the horse arrangements here. We get an idea of the date from the way it's carved. Well, then the interesting thing is we find a carving below on the tombstone telling you exactly who it is, where he was from. And interesting enough, when you do see the carving in Latin of his name, it's practically spelt out the way it's there, and it's Thracian, and it's Stadepes. Very interesting. A surname back then. Surnames, by the way, in a Welsh context, didn't come in until a few hundred years ago. We were always ap somebody or ap this and that. But the idea of surnames is well entrenched in the Roman ideal. There's the horse itself trampling on this poor individual below. This is to be found at Colchester Castle Museum, which I'm sure when we go to Colchester, I think we'll be spending more than an hour in there. I certainly will be spending a bit of time in there. And there's the inscription below.
Wow.
Longinus. Tell you what, the inscriptions in the early stages of Roman Britain were. Agreed? Agreed. Longinus Stadepes. If that's an Eastern European name, what is? Stadepes. Just think, you've got that family name today, and you could be related to this person. 2,000 years. Amazing. And I'm not going to say any more about this, but the tomb carvings in the early stages are to die for. I think what's happening, because by about the 200-300s, there's so many tomb carvings that they're thinking of a different way of disposing of their loved ones. And carvings, you can't really have burial grounds as big as they were before. And lots of these carvings that we do find are usually reused or recycled. Go on.
Sorry, can you look at the horse's front right leg?
There. No, that one. That.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you make it bigger?
Right. This you can comment on this one because I'm not sure. Go on.
Is that rope going round its hoof?
That's hair.
Alright. So it looked like rope.
That's hair. That's hair. On a shire. Shire. Pardon?
Yeah, they get fetlocks which go back.
Yeah.
What about on the other picture?
What?
This picture.
On the previous one. There. It's a lot more clearer because it's a different shape. There you go. It's hair. You can see from there.
It looks like rope. I think they broke the man.
It's hair definitely here.
Oh, it's more on the back.
Yeah, definitely here. So maybe galosh type rope. But I don't know. You could be right.
Or is it the man's hair?
No, it's not.
I just
No.
think it looked like rope as you went off the picture.
Yeah, he is facing us as well. But obviously this is very stylised. And this obviously giving you a political message. Could you imagine how this survived the Boudican revolt? We don't know. And the answer is it was carved after the Boudicca revolt, because if this had been in Colchester at the time of the Boudicca revolt, I don't think it would have lasted long, would it have? So this is about, probably the date's wrong by about a year there. It should be about AD 61. This Facilis, this carving of Facilis, is definitely one that reminds me of my school days. He's from the 20th Vitrix Legion. And look at that word there, erected, E-R-E-C-V-N-D. That's erected by the 20th Valia Vitrix, 20th Vitrix Legion erected. And this is Facilis, who's to be seen carved there, Facilis. And they actually run out of room, so they have to carve the L-I-S below. But I remember this from my school days, and this itself, Alan, beautiful?
Oh, yes.
Yes, beautiful. The only thing we're missing is his nose, and I think the ear's gone as well. I think the ear on the left-hand side's gone. But this itself, you can go a little bit towards Greek carving, because they've had to carve all the way at the back there. They've had to carve this detail. And again, if they made a mistake with this, you'd have had to have started again. So this carver, from my earlier notes, was probably a Greek carver, a Greek artist, or we don't know, because there were obviously Romans who were capable of doing this, and the armour and everything, absolutely beautiful, gladius. Again, moving on. And we know he was of some authority because of the rod here. This is a centurion's beating rod. So hence we can identify this as centurion Facilis. The centurions were able to beat who they wished. Now, walking down, don't get too excited, Andrew. It's not going to happen in this room yet. The comment was made by Peter that is somebody putting something in the teas and the drinks of all the men, because the women are increasing in number here.
No, it wasn't.
Well, I put words in your mouth.
It's still worth a thought.
It's still worth a thought, yeah. And we are now officially at the stage that if anyone joins a group, and I'll tell you, Frank, because I said this in the day school, if anyone joins a group who I don't like, they won't be staying. And the reason why that is because we've got a nice number here and it really works, and we've been discussing that, and it really does work. Anyone who upsets the apple cart, they won't be here.
Have you put that in the terms and conditions?
Yes.
Anyone that the Carl doesn't like will not be.
Yeah.
And how will you tell them? Yeah, can we watch?
Now, what's gonna happen, right?
Hesitant.
What's gonna happen? If they've got a phobia, i.e. they don't like transvestites, or they don't like anything else, right? That the next lecture that they're meant to turn up in, I will dress like a full transvestite, and they will run out the room and they won't want to come back again.
Other people might join.
Come on, quickly.
I don't like Scotch eggs, so does that make a difference?
Yes, yeah.
Dressed like a Scotch egg then. yeah.
Dress up as a Scotch egg. What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to find ways out. Oh, you sassed it.
You're just a glutton for punishment last week. So we're looking into a street scene, and what's this got to do with art? Everything to do with art. On the horse, the bridle, there would be Roman depictions of gods. We have a Gorgon on there. The women would have their brooches and stuff underneath their togas. The men would wear their wealth in their intaglios, art. You've got columns, art. You've got going down the street. You would look into somebody's building, frescoes on the wall, mosaics on the floor, statues, maybe a statue of an eagle. Art was everywhere. Art was Rome, art is Rome, from what you wish to believe. And there he is again, a tiny little bit of detail. I said we'd come back to him. Claudius, found in the river Adel in Redham, near Saxmundham, Suffolk. And for those that want to know where Saxmund is and where Colchester is, we'll have a little map coming up in a minute. Now, this was associated with the Temple of Claudius, once known as the Coloni Victricensis. It eventually became known as Calamandunum because she could tell I got a block nose. But this itself ended up in that river of Ald at Rendon. And there it is, not too far away, which is Colchester over here. From Colchester, so it sort of went that way. The rebellion went this way. So why it ended up there, we don't know. And again, the wall. I don't know why this is in your Colchester trip again. The wall around Colchester was built after the Boudicca revolt. It was undefended when it was captured, and the only defendable place was the Temple of Claudius. That's where all the military. That for 2 days they were roasted to death, because what would happen? The Britons couldn't get in there, so they stacked up wood all around the temple and they roasted them to death in there, and they were all dead after 2 days. But mind you, you would have preferred to have been roasted to death, because what was going to happen to you if you were captured does not defeat the imagination. Women had their breasts cut off, sewn across their mouths, and still alive. You could only do that when the flesh, yeah.
How do we know that?
Because there are descriptions of it. That's as far as we go. There were descriptions from Tacitus of it.
And how much of it was propaganda?
Oh, okay. I want to believe it, and so does Gough.
I don't believe it.
They are in the valleys. Right, there he is again. And okay, so here we go. 61 AD, the Iceni rebelled against the Romans, joined by another tribe, the Trinovantes. They captured Camalodunum. The Coloni Camalodunum Victricensis was the first target, with its temple seen in the British eyes as stronghold of everlasting domination, according to Tacitus. Arexe Aeternae Dominatus, which is the eternal domination of Rome. They wanted to destroy the temple of Claudius, because this was Rome. Art, and the statue of Claudius was the statue, as they were in the cellar below, the Roman soldiers trying to defend themselves, they could hear the temple being ripped apart above them, and this statue being thrown down.
Well, if they'd all been burnt to death, who told Tacitus that that's what had happened?
Dennis, help me out on this one. Propaganda, maybe. The town. You're spoiling my lecture. When I don't want anyone to turn around and say that's all absolute nonsense. When I do that lecture about raping and pillaging for the streets of Camalodunum.
Well, they found burnt bits, haven't they? So they.
Yeah, exactly. Burnt bits, exactly. The town was destroyed, was survived, as we know. In the attack, everything was broken down and burnt. The temple where the soldiers had congregated was besieged for 2 days and then sacked. The decapitated bronze head of a statue of Claudius was found in the River Adel in Suffolk. And then eventually a wall was placed around the city. It was meant to be where the veterans would have a nice time off. And there is Colchester there. So the River Adel's over here. And it's not far away. It's found in the river that side. So here we go. There is a mosaic. Just to give you an idea of clarity, mosaics themselves are displaying greatly increased mythical scenes of the Roman world. Just want to chuck that in there as a reminder, and the craftsmanship placed into a mosaic from very small crude pieces of tessera like this. These create something like this, and we know that these created the mosaic because those are the loose bits of tessera from this mosaic itself, to create beauty from very plain utilitarian fragments. So you can tell quickly that's a chalky stone, that's a limestone, higher grains in this is a sandstone giving you colour. Your red is your terracotta. And if ever I get the opportunity to go back to the Carillion Museum as part of my PhD stuff, if anyone wants to come in and sort of go through the artefacts with me, they got loads of stuff like this, loads of individual brooches and stuff. I might invite one of you to come along and be my assistant. Ellen's already in the list. So again, this from a villa like this. So obviously, when a villa itself, again, Roman civilization, the bathhouse in a Roman villa. You're going to see mosaics on the floor, frescoes on the wall, statuary as well, finials on the roofs. You're going to see little temples. It's all, again, the mosaics on the floor as you're walking through this building. Only a small fragment they've excavated, but it's a huge mosaic that they've actually found at the site. This is the Cramond. And the point I was trying to make at the beginning was that I sat down and I thought, this lion up north, I can't find it. I was typing in lioness, lion, Scotland, Roman. I thought I can't find it in my old issue of current archaeology. I know it's on a cover of current archaeology. And I thought, Cramond lion. Typed in Cramond lion, found it straight away. It's wonderful what your memory does occasionally. That it remembers things. I can't remember your name, Andrea, but that's life. So the Cramond lion. As you can tell from the scale, dupe, it's a big thing, and they had to use lifting equipment to take it out of the muds. I think they were doing a desilting operation in this sort of the river there, and they found this wonderful find. There it is. It would have been painted. Again, in other words, another word, adorned, it would have been painted and so on. So again, beautiful.
It's probably a British sculptor, wasn't it? Because the lion's not too realistic.
Okay, you just made my point. Because that's a lion. A little bit more descriptive from Corbridge. Now, Corbridge was a purely Roman military site. This was the lion itself was associated with a military site, but then again, was the carver? Now you've bit of a red herring there, but it could have been a Roman or Greek carver who didn't know what a lion looked like. So we can't really go any further with that. But that's absolutely beautiful. And when we look at the Cramond, we actually move on to the other. This is a lioness. So we go to from the Cramond. Looking at, they're almost praying. They've worked out that this is actually a cow from the hooves and the horns. I think somebody said it's a sheep, and then somebody said that the horns are a bit too big. This is the great debate in the notes. It does look a bit like sheep-like, but they reckon it's a proportion. It's got to be representing a cow. But they've got some of the details wrong. I'm glad you spotted that. But there you go. If this was a sheep, it's a small lion. Do you know what I mean? So it's got to be. Did you see the point we're trying to make there? That's the great debate. But again, a lion, and the mane is really good, and it's a lot more lifelike. Huge paws, and lions do have huge paws. The Cramond lioness quickly was found in the River Almond. Nothing to do with Mark. And it was recovered in 1997. Cramond, basically outskirts of Edinburgh. It depicts a Bond male, a prisoner. Somebody was bounded. Bounded. Does it say bound or bond? B-O-U-N-D. Bound. Sorry, my use of English. Or lack of English. Being killed by a lioness. The upper torso and head of the prisoner are shown. And the giant lioness behind him sinking her teeth into his skull. The work is interpreted as a Roman sculpture imported to Scotland. Interpreted may be local. It's quite a big piece of stonework. And then we go off. It was imported into Scotland to serve as part of the tomb of a Roman military commander or dignitary. Again, how do they know that? The location of such a tomb and how the sculpture reached its location in the river are unknown. Put it this way, right? You've got this huge, massive lion that you would need quite a number of people to have actually dragged it into the river, it may have not actually reached its final. It may have actually just fallen overboard.
Well, rivers move, so if it was sitting
Yeah,
there.
that's what I was thinking.
And there's that as well. So we're not sure, but it's a beautiful carving, and it's in the Edinburgh Museum today.
Did they have a, oh God, I can't think of it, like a Colosseum there? They're not Colosseum, you know, where gladiators fought.
We would, right, with most Roman forts, large forts, there was an amphitheatre, a small amphitheatre. They love their theatres. We've got the beautiful theatre of St Albans, which is mainly a mock-up of a theatre, but we do have them surviving. Actually, what I said at the beginning, Colosseum, in the excavations at Chester and London in the 1980s, they were finding signs of a really impressive Colosseum. But north goes, obviously fashion's different. Eberacum was a massively major Roman city, but the whereabouts of a huge Colosseum in Eberacum, York, has been a little bit elusive. So we go a bit further north. It could be to do with, I'm going to chuck a racetrack in there, you know what I mean? It could be to do with anything. It could be to do, there could have been two of them. This could have been going up further upriver to the Antonine frontier. This could have been as a major ornamental gate between the new province of the north and the now new province between the Antonine Wall and Hadrian's Wall towards the south.
That was downstream from the Antonine Wall, which is west of it. The Almond is near Queen's Ferry. It's where Mary Queen of Scots crossed.
So it wouldn't be possible to get this to...
Well,
Is it possible?
Glasgow, I'm trying to do it.
Quick point.
Well, you've got the Antonine Wall there, and the Cramond Lions here, and
Yeah.
there's Edinburgh.
So it's not possible it was heading there. Okay,
No.
fair enough. Well, it was just a suggestion anyway. Anyway,
Would they really take something as big as I suppose they would do?
they would do. Look at that there. That's not small either. A beautiful lion. And hopefully, have I got until about another 10 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Right, good. So we'll do 10 minutes. So it's the Corbridge line. Again, these things are being found intact and they're beautiful carvings. Military carvings. The showpiece in the Corbridge collection. You've seen it, Alan?
Yeah.
The best preserved of 5 lion statues from Corbridge. A detailed carving depicts a male lion ferociously pouncing on its prey. The identity of the prey has confused sculpture experts to identify it. The horns and ears would suggest the sculpture was depicting a sheep or goat, but the size in comparison to the lion is that of a cow. It's possible that the sculpture wanted the lion to seem even more impressive by killing a larger animal and change his mind partway through carving. This is the Cowbridge lion. It's not much bigger than that. It's tiny. And this was found at Hopyard Meadow in Cowbridge. When the archaeologists found this, they said there was four of these adorning the mausoleum at Hopyard Meadow in Cowbridge. And then people started to say, but where's the other? Oh, well, we can't. There's no sign of a mausoleum here, but there probably was, and there was definitely 4 of them. And then found nothing else with it. It was found in the ground in a load of mud. So again, is this? If you've noticed, the lions that have been found is being postulated that they're part of a mausoleum, but no mausoleums. Yeah.
So where's that kept now?
This was kept in the Cowbridge Museum, but then it was moved to the National Museum of Wales. Don't know where it is now. This is we can obviously do the Cowbridge lion again, but it's wonderful piece of sandstone. Beautiful piece of sandstone. This is the Hoxney hoard. This originally contained 14,000 coins, silver and gold. Not all the items are in there. There are some of them on display. But look at that spoon there. Look at the spoons. Look at the goldware. Very few plates in here, and they believe that there was another box that had another case that had plates in. There were several of these boxes. They only found one. Probably somebody come along and thought, oh, can't be bothered with that box. We'll just take the others because the others were more valuable than this. Starts to make you wonder, doesn't it, what was in the other boxes? The reason why we think there were other boxes is because a Roman household. You remember, we've all got a house and we've got plates there, we've got spoons, we've got cups, and we've got mugs, and we've got everything, right? Similar to a Roman house, and there weren't these big platters, which a house with this value and quality would have had huge platters, and they're nowhere to be seen. And we know it was placed. We know it was like this. There were individual boxes within a case because the way they were lying, with a bit of mud there, decayed there, and the soil, and all these would have been placed in individual bags. That's how they feel it was represented in the ground. Some other pieces from the Hoxne. The Hoxne hoard itself is the largest late Roman silver gold coin. Start again. Was the greatest hoard found in Britain to date of silver and gold coins, jewellery, utilitarian things. And it dates from into the 400s. Into the 400s when Britain was starting to decay. It was found in Suffolk. So in that area of wonder associated with Colchester and so on. The hoard consists of 14,865 Roman gold, silver and bronze coins. Oh, that's a lot. 200 items of silver tableware and gold jewellery. Again, a lot. Value, if it was valued today and not 1993 when it went to the Treasure Valuation Committee, it would go for £3.5 million. The cost of a house in Kensington in London today. The hoard was buried in an oak box with small little or small chest filled with items in precious metal, in smaller wooden boxes and little cloth bags. The latest coin in a hoard dates to around AD 407. Give a little idea of its circulation. Probably buried in the ground about 415, 420. It is likely that the hoard represents only a part of the wealth of its owner. Only a part of the wealth. In archaeology itself, we only find a small proportion of the wealth. So say, for example, what did I collect in this class today? Okay, that in the archaeology is what you're going to find. So that there, that's what we're going to find, because the wealth of these villas themselves, the ground plan was the size of the car park and this building and more, with buildings, mosaics. Those rooms would have had individual furniture, vases, they would have had kitchens, they would have had bedrooms. All that needs to be housed. This is only a small proportion. The Hoxne hoard contains several rare and important objects. Pepper pot, the one I showed you at the beginning with the Empress pepper pot. The hoard is also of particular archaeological significance because it was excavated by professional archaeologists and largely undisturbed and intact. And they say helped improve the relationship between detectorists and archaeologists because they worked together on this one. And a quick thing, Hoxne, the coins found in the Hoxne hoard came from as far away on the border between Syria and Turkey as Antioch. Coins from Rome, Milan, all the way to Simium, Ravenna. These coins and lots of the stuff in the Hoxne hoard came from this wide array of places, showing the wealth of the individual buried there. This is not silverware from this country. Some of the coins they've analysed, and what's interesting to me is the lateness of lots of these coins. These coins here, going up to the 4840, to have silver coins still coming into Britain at this time is extremely rare. So the people were extremely wealthy. There is the pepper pot. Oh, by the way, one quick thing I want to demonstrate is there were 580 gold coins, solidi, found within this hoard. Each of those gold coins would probably represent the yearly wage. I need to look at my book on this. The yearly wage of a Roman soldier. So you've got 580 of these. Does that give you an idea of the value of this hoard? Probably need to look me up on that one. But the Empress, there she is there. Beautiful pepper pot. To give you an idea, you've got all these little sort of pots as well. You've got a round there. I'm not sure what that beast is in front. And again, gold items like this was found as well. You've got amethyst. You've got garnet there as well. And some of the coins. They only some of the coins. Only some of the coins are on display. I think they've been moved around other collections. A beautiful array of coins. Just looking at that. Archaeology isn't about finding coins, as some of you will find when you go on the excavation in Trellick with me, but it's part of the picture. And again, as they're looking at these, one of those spoons very similar to Michael's, Ellen? Yes?
Yeah, the long hand.
Yeah, sizes and everything. As we get to the end of here, just about 4 minutes now, if I can keep you and just sort of, this is one of the things that we do know, the beautiful carvings associated with the sarcophagi, lead coffin. On the adornments of lots of these lead coffins was the scallop shell. Quick story, in Barry in 1943, some American servicemen were excavating, they found several lead coffins with scallop shells on the lid and on the side. And they decided to empty these lead coffins, take them to a scrappy. From the descriptions years later, we worked out that they were lead coffins that American servicemen had found in Barry. And it was only a few years later that they actually started finding these things with scallop shells in London. There's the lioness. This would be on a tankard. Now, the lioness was found, but not the pewter tankard, which is very interesting. That's the handle for the tankard in there. Okay? So, fair enough. It wouldn't be very comfortable, but tankard handles are not comfortable. All the ones I've seen are not comfortable. I think it's to sort of make you drink less, but that's probably not what Peter thinks. Go back to the lioness was from the Hoxley Hoard. There's the scallop shells. That was from the sarcophagi. We've just seen scallops on there. Beautiful. And more. This was actually found in a scrappy, and they found out this was a bit of a Roman coffin. I don't know, but this was found. Unless the scrappy knows what they're looking for, they're not going to know that this is part of a Roman lead coffin. And actually, we have actually ended up at where I wanted us to end up, because that's the end of the lecture. So that there is an Etruscan lady, and as you can understand, the development of the sarcophagi, Roman sarcophagi, had come from the Etruscan world. So what I'm going to say before I ask for questions and anything else is that next week we'll be doing the archaeology of the art of a mystery subject. And then the following week we'll be doing the archaeology of the art of mythical beasts. And then the week after that we'll be doing the Minoan art. And then we'll be looking at the Etruscans. And the one that Goff wants to hear about, Prehistoric Britain on the 8th of April. And then Ancient Wonders, and then we do believe we've got the archaeology of the art of erotica. Any questions today?
Thinking that big hoard, do we know where the silver plate came from originally? Any thoughts?
Which with the Mildenham?
Yeah.
I can't answer on that, but if we ever do come to it, I will be able to answer that. Lots of this stuff has come from the continent, yes.
Yeah, and we Google it.
Yes, please do. Are there any other questions?
What do they clean the metal with when they take it out of the ground and put it on display? Just, sometimes it's encrusted.
Yeah, that's right. Put it this way, to disinherit a coin from something else, it's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of gentle. I've done lots of this myself, and a whole range of different chemicals are going to be used. And obviously, remember that lots of these items have been placed into a cloth bag. So you've got to be very careful to gather some of the evidence from the cloth bag that these items were placed in the first place. So the topic of conservation is a huge topic, and you're going to be using various alkalines, various different acids, and to try to keep away from that stuff called water. Alcohol's always good. Are there any other questions? Have you all enjoyed today? Are you all exhausted as I am?
Yeah.
Good. Dennis, I just want a quick chat with you about something. You haven't done anything wrong yet. If there's no more questions,
Just one.
Kathy, one.
Next week.
Go on.
My article of the week.
Oh, articles of the week, quickly. Quickly, Keith, your question.
Definitely 6:30 pick up, isn't it? On the
Definitely
on the Friday.
6:30, yes. Ethiopian Emperor's hair to be returned by UK Museum. The National Army Museum said yesterday that it has agreed to a formal request for the return of objects considered to be of cultural sensitivity to the Ethiopian civilians. I agree. Tewodros chose to kill himself rather than surrender to the British after the capture of Makwadala in 1868, and they took a lock of his hair. This was in 1868. National Army Museum said the locks of Tewodros' hair were given to it in 1959 by the family of the artist who painted the emperor on his deathbed. The museum regard them as important to the collection for their historical connection to a major unique campaign fought by the British Army in 1868 and were collected in good faith whilst we tried to annihilate the Ethiopian people. It wants the hair returned so it can be interred with Tewodros at the Trinity Monastery in the northern part of the country. And finally, bird that flew 52 million years ago. Archaeologists have discovered a bird that looks very similar to a modern-day sparrow, which is a little image there. 52 million years ago, it's known as the Ephroingloistromus bodrixi, was found in the USA in a rich scene of fossil deposits, and it's absolutely beautiful. If there's no more questions, thank you very much today. I'll see you all next week. Any problems, get in touch with me via text, or if anyone is writing on Facebook, Gillian will pick it up and let me know, won't you, Gillian? Thank you very much.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
There you go. That's again to annoy Kathy. Dennis, right, let's roll this in. Don't want anyone else. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right, let you move. Give you my love. I'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Still toilet. The bourbon biscuit covered in sugar. Thank you.
No ants, luckily.
Yeah. I was in my cupboard last year. God, it's like a war of attrition.
Oh no. Cheerio, James.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That's it? Yep.
Yeah. Good news.
Cheerio. See you next week.
Bye.
Ta-ta.
I think we all need to lie down in a darkened room now.
Yeah, so long, isn't it? I mean, I think it's great, but I get a bit tired.
Fresh air halfway through is good.
Yeah, fresh air is what we need. If you go on one of the Facebook page, you'll see the pub.
I'm going to look for it because we
It's
are.
on that picture I sent recently. I was up there.
Wait, I saw the one where you all sitting around
That's
the
it.
table.
I'm going to find my keys.
We,
I got to move my car. Right.
we're hoping to go up in the
I got to write something down.
Yeah, we'll look for it.
Do you remember the George Hotel?
Oh,
It's not, and
friends
it's
and family, let me know.
Good
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
no,
Oh,
don't
yeah.
do that. It's business. But it's a lovely part of the world.
It is. Okay. See you folks.
Yes,
Okay, cheers, Scott. See you next week.
Get out now without the 3 times goodbye.
Yes, we did.
Cheerio, everybody. See you next week.
I think we'll do a runner as well this week.
No, I've got a meal.
Oh, right. Okay.
What?
You.
Yes.
Whose umbrella?
Oh,
Not got, is it?
I don't know.
Whoa. I'm across to the pub, guys.
Okay,
Yes,
cheers.
that's right. I don't want to stay to the end again this time. Just see.
Apparently he's got a message for me, but it seemed to be remember the George Hotel, but that means nothing to me, you know. So perhaps he'll come back and explain it.
Who? Carl's got it.
Carl, yeah,
Oh.
he asked me to wait, you know.
Right.
So I suppose I'm
Are you
waiting.
doing as you're told?
Yeah. What do you feel?
I feel okay, but after so much talking and seems to be a lot of words and things.
Yes,
I'm
I'm trying to think of a way of, since I've been coming to.
I'm going to load your app with it. Where's your app still?
Oh yeah.
Right, I'll give it back to you now.
I better start getting my stuff together.
Right, okay, I'm going to write down the George Hotel. Apparently, I can't find a pen.
There's a pen here.
Sure you. Yeah, I know. Are those your pens?
No, they're not.
Apparently, I've got to go to the George Hotel. And apparently, in the George Hotel in Colchester, there's a bit of the wall that still shows the scorch marks as when Boudica burnt the place. And also, there's a couple of people saying that they want me to do a daytime walk to Llantwit.
I'm going to be clinky now all the way home with these bottles.
You've only got one.
Well, it thinks against another thing, doesn't it?
Who's still out here then?
Lurking. Oh look, it stinks up in here.
George.
Doing all the hot
Hot
air.
S&M. How can you have an S&M? Small and large. Here you go, Dennis.
Small to medium.
It's the right way to put it. Oh, great. Thanks.
Does he look like the Invisible Man?
I don't know.
Right, that was very, yeah.
Informative.
Did you like that today?
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely loved
Yeah, next week's lecture, I'm not sure it's going to be some people's bit, but we'll see. Whose is this?
I don't know.
it. We don't know.
Was it in here when you got here?
I don't know. Was it? I wonder if it's Goths.
That's
Yeah, that-
mine. Get your
Oh,
bits off.
Oh, there we are.
Thank you.
There you go.
I realised that must be an umbrella that cost £100.
Well, you saw the make, did you?
Yes, I did.
Well, it wasn't me that bought it.
Oh, it's a posh
You
one.
know what?
Yes.
As soon as I saw the name, I thought I'm not on that level to even touch it. Oh, hey, can I just have a look at the shaft? Oh, look at that wooden shaft there. Oh, wow. Let's have a look at the tip. Is that metal?
Well, it's supposed to be windproof.
Oh.
Yeah, I got one like that. Oh,
It's
oh.
got vents underneath.
But look at these little things here. They're made of wood.
Well, one of them dropped off the other day. But,
Bye, girls.
Bye.
Did you just hear that? She says, bye,
In
girls.
a fortnight we won't be here next week.
What do you mean we won't be here?
Chris and I have
You
got-
know you've got to take turns. One of you got to stay behind.
No, we've got a prior engagement.
Very nice too.
Lady.
Very nice.
Very nice too. And by the way, that story about Woodford House, we've got to get an illustration somehow of some navy boots.
What?
Explain to Chris.
One of my father's
okay,
stories
come on.
about Woodford House.
Come on, boy.
It was army people in there.
what
And
was Woodford House? Sorry? What was Woodford House?
it's a house on Beach Road. And my dad and his friend were in there when they shouldn't be. And they hid in a cupboard because they could hear footsteps. And the footsteps came up the stairs across the floor and disappeared, and there was nobody there. Oh, I missed that bit. Right then.
Bye.
And when it does tip, I've left the bloody thing at home.
Tuesday.
Yep.
I'll go and get my hat in a minute. Hang on. Oh God, I just realised something. Bollocks. Shit. Have you got 2 minutes, Dennis?
I haven't got as much as you.
Alright then, give me a sec. I'm just going to phone Michelle and say hello. Because I'm expecting my call. Shit. Hello, hiya. Yeah, it's been busy today. There were 14 of us today, so it's been busy. Had to give out all the wine and stuff. Dennis is